It was a Thursday. That matters to me now. Not because anything magical ever happened on a Thursday, but because normal things usually did. Garbage pickup, dry cleaning, Ethan's soccer practice. Routine. But that Thursday didn't feel routine. I didn't know it in the moment, but something was tightening, wrapping around my life like a slow, invisible cord. It started with a call from the school. My son had left early, apparently with permission. The secretary said his mother had called in and excused him. I hadn't. Called her. No answer. Sent a text. Everything okay? Nothing. That's when I left the office. Didn't tell anyone. I walked out mid-meeting, grabbed my coat, and drove home like my fingers weren't attached to the wheel. I wasn't panicking, not yet. Just curious. A quiet curiosity. The kind that tiptoes through your stomach and whispers that something isn't sitting right. The house looked calm when I pulled in. Same porch, same damn wind chimes she bought last spring. Still tangled and silent. But her car wasn't in the driveway. And neither was Tyler's. Tyler, my son's best friend, practically lived at our place. I never questioned it. He was the quiet one. The kind who never makes trouble, eats whatever's in the fridge, always says, "Sir." The kind of boy you trust around your family. I opened the front door. I didn't sneak. I walked in like I lived there, because I did. I still do. Silence. Not the usual empty house silence, but a curated one. Like someone had vacuumed the air out of the place. I called out for Ethan. Nothing. Called out again. Still nothing. I don't know what made me go upstairs. I wasn't suspicious. Not in that moment. It was muscle memory. Maybe I thought I'd find him gaming, headphones in, ignoring the world. What I found instead burned its shape into my memory. Our bedroom door was open, just enough. I didn't hear anything. No sounds, no voices. Just a draft of cold air that smelled like sweat and something else I didn't want to name. I stepped closer, nudged the door wider. And there she was. Not in bed. Not wrapped in sheets. Not even trying to pretend. She was standing, bent forward, laughing. And behind her, his shirt off, hair damp, face too familiar, was Tyler. My son's best friend. She saw me first. Her expression didn't change. Not right away. Not even shame. Just surprise, like I was early to a party I wasn't invited to. I didn't say a word. I didn't yell. I didn't ask why. I just stared. Not at her. At him. He froze. His mouth opened like he might apologize, or scream, or explain the unexplainable. But nothing came out. Just the sound of his fear chewing on his breath. She had the nerve to speak first. "You weren't supposed to be home." Like I was the one out of place. Like I'd walked into a scene she was directing. I didn't answer her. I didn't even look at her. I turned and left. I walked down the stairs, through the hallway, and out the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't run. I walked like gravity was the only thing moving me. The driveway was still empty. The sky was gray. My phone buzzed, work again. I drove. I didn't know where. I just drove. That night, I didn't go home. I didn't answer her calls. I didn't even tell Ethan. And she didn't bother trying to explain. Not that night. She waited 3 days. And when she finally did speak, her words were worse than the silence. 3 days. That's how long she waited to say a word. Not a text, not a voicemail. Just absence. As if disappearing was a valid tactic when the walls you burned are still smoldering behind you. I stayed at a cheap motel. The kind with scratchy sheets and neighbors who yell at each other through the walls. I didn't sleep much. Just stared at the ceiling while my thoughts gnawed at each other like dogs in a cage. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to. I just couldn't. It was like the betrayal hadn't finished unpacking in my brain yet. My body hadn't figured out how to process it. I didn't tell Ethan. He was still at his friend Cody's place, or at least that's where he told me he'd be staying for a few days. I didn't ask questions. Didn't want to pull that thread yet. Didn't want to hear Tyler's name in his mouth. Not yet. On the third morning, my phone finally lit up. Not a call. A message. It was her. "We need to talk. I know what you saw. I owe you an explanation." An explanation. Like there's a clean way to explain what I saw. Like a polished version of it might make it make sense. I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, another message. "Please, just hear me out. It's not what you think." There it was. The script. Not what you think. Like I'd hallucinated it. Like the image of her laughing with my son's best friend was up for interpretation. I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I drove home. When I pulled into the driveway, she was sitting on the porch steps. Jeans, hoodie, barefoot. She looked small, like she was trying to shrink into herself. But it wasn't guilt. I know guilt. I felt guilt. This was something else. She stood as I got out of the car. I didn't say anything, just walked past her into the house. She followed. Inside, everything looked exactly as it had before. But nothing felt the same. The air was heavy. The walls seemed to lean in, waiting. She stood in the kitchen while I leaned on the counter, arms crossed. I didn't offer her comfort. I didn't give her an opening. She opened her mouth and words started tumbling out fast, like she'd rehearsed them in the mirror. He was upset. Tyler. He came to talk about Ethan. Said Ethan had been acting weird, pushing him away. I made him tea. We talked. That's all it was at first. I didn't plan for it to happen. I blinked. You didn't plan for it? I asked, calm. Too calm. She flinched like the tone hurt more than shouting would've. It just happened. One time. I swear. That day you walked in. That was the only time. I smiled. It was the first time I'd smiled in days, and it felt violent on my own face. One time? That's the story you're going with. She hesitated. Just for a second. And that was enough. You know what I think? I continued. I think you're lying. I think you've been lying for weeks. Maybe months. I think the only reason you're not still lying is because I caught you. She dropped her eyes. That's when I knew. It's not like that, she whispered. Then what is it like? I snapped, voice sharp now. Explain it to me. Explain how you go from making tea to bending over the bed where our son was conceived. She didn't cry. Not once. She just kept trying to twist the narrative like a towel, squeezing it for pity. He said he had feelings, she said suddenly. He was confused. I was trying to help. I laughed. You were helping him. She nodded. I never meant to hurt you. That was the closest thing to remorse she gave me. I looked at her for a long moment. The woman I'd shared my life with. She wasn't even a stranger. Strangers have the decency to come into your life with clean slates. She was worse. She was familiar. I don't want to hear another word from you, I said. Not now. Not for a while. You're going to pack a bag. You're going to leave this house. You're going to give me space. Her face twitched like she was going to argue. But she didn't. She turned. Walked upstairs. I heard the creak of the closet door. The scrape of a suitcase being pulled out. She left 30 minutes later. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't ask about Ethan. Didn't offer a real apology. She just left. And I stood in the hallway, wondering how many times Tyler had walked those same stairs behind her. Wondering if my son knew what his best friend had done. That night, I made a decision. But before I could carry it out, something else happened. Something I hadn't seen coming. The day after she left, the house felt quieter than it ever had. Not peaceful. Just hollow, like someone had stripped the walls of their voice. I didn't turn on the TV. Didn't play music. I just walked room to room, opening doors like I might find a version of my life that hadn't been cracked open and gutted. I kept expecting Ethan to come back. I figured maybe he'd call or text or just show up with that awkward, teenage silence of his. But the hours passed and nothing. I stared at his last message. At Cody's for a bit. Everything okay? And wondered how to even begin answering that. Then, right after sundown, I got a knock on the door. Not a ring, not loud. Just 3 steady knocks. I opened it. And there he was. Tyler. Hands in his hoodie pockets. Head down like he was some misunderstood protagonist from a teen drama. For a second, I couldn't speak. I wasn't even sure what I was feeling. Rage, confusion, disgust, pity, all chewing on each other inside my chest. He looked up. His eyes were red. Not the kind of red you get from allergies or lack of sleep. The kind that came from guilt, panic, or crying until your brain felt loose in your skull. I need to talk to you, he said. I didn't move. I just stared at him. I shouldn't have come, he mumbled, stepping back. But I opened the door wider. Come in. He paused, confused, scared maybe. Then he stepped inside like the floor might give out beneath him. We sat in the living room. I didn't offer him water. He didn't ask. He looked around like everything felt foreign now. I know what I did, he started. I know there's no fixing it. And I'm not here to make excuses. I didn't say anything. I wanted him to feel the silence tighten around his throat. She started it, he said suddenly, voice cracking. I know I should have said no. I should have told Ethan. I should have walked away. I finally spoke. How long? He swallowed hard. For months. That hit harder than I expected. Where? I asked. His eyes flicked toward the hallway. Mostly here. Once at her sister's place when she said she had to drop something off. Once in the car. Once. He trailed off. Probably saw something in my face that made him stop. I leaned forward. Tell me this, and tell me straight. Was my son ever in the house when it happened? His answer came like a nail driven through a board. Yes. I leaned back and covered my face. Not to cry. Just to contain what I was about to say. Or maybe stop myself from doing something I'd regret. You stayed friends with him? I said through my hands. You ate dinner with us. You played board games with me. You called me sir. I didn't plan for it, he whispered. You didn't have to plan it, I snapped. You just had to not stop it. He sat there, eyes on the floor. And then he dropped the bomb. She told me she was going to leave you. I froze. She said she wanted to start over. With me. That she loved me. I stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. I couldn't even picture those words coming out of her mouth. She said you didn't understand her anymore. That you'd gotten boring. That you were just a routine. That's when something shifted in me. Not anger. Not pain. Just a cold, perfect clarity. I stood up. Leave, I said. He looked up. What? Leave. Don't come back here. Don't call Ethan. Don't speak to me again. I don't care what she told you. Whatever fantasy she spun, it's over. You were a chapter in a book she's been lying in for years. You'll be gone before the ink dries. He didn't move, so I stepped forward, fast. Get out. He stood, backed away, opened the door and walked into the night without another word. I locked the door behind him. I didn't sit down. I didn't breathe. I walked into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared out the window. That's when I saw Ethan, standing in the dark, just on the edge of the porch. He'd heard everything, and the look in his eyes wasn't sadness. It was betrayal, but not toward me, toward both of them. He opened the door slowly and stepped inside, his face white with silence. Is it true? He asked. I couldn't speak. I didn't have to. He already knew that he stood there, just inside the doorway, staring at me like he was seeing something grotesque, like I'd mutated into something inhuman while he was gone. The question had already been asked. Is it true? But now it hovered in the air again, like it wanted to sink its claws deeper into both of us. I didn't answer right away. I studied his face. Ethan was always a quiet kid, but he wasn't fragile. He had this way of holding his emotions like he was protecting them from being stepped on. Right then, though, it was all on the surface. His jaw clenched, breath sharp, eyes wide and angry in a way I hadn't seen since he was a toddler and I accidentally ran over his toy truck. It's true, I said finally. The words barely made it out. Not because I was afraid to say them, but because saying them out loud made it all too real. Ethan blinked. Tyler. I nodded. For months. He didn't move, didn't yell, didn't cry. Instead, he walked past me, straight through the hallway, past the kitchen, and out the back door into the yard. I followed, but I didn't say anything. He needed space. I'd had mine. He deserved his. I found him sitting on the edge of the garden wall we built 2 summers ago, back when this house felt like a home and not a crime scene. He had his head in his hands. I sat beside him, careful not to touch him. I was gonna tell you, I said. I just didn't know how. I wanted to protect you from it. But that option's gone now. He didn't lift his head. Just asked. Was it going on while I was here? I hated the answer, but I gave it. Yes. He went quiet. Too quiet. Then, she ruined everything. There was a hard finality in his voice that shook me more than the betrayal ever could. It wasn't just hurt. It was the death of trust. Something he'd probably never get back in the same form again. I thought she was just being weird lately, short with me, overly nice sometimes. I thought it was menopause or something, he said, voice low, almost laughing but not. Then, more quietly, he was like a brother. I closed my eyes. I know. He looked at me then, eyes rimmed red but dry. What are you gonna do? It was a loaded question, and one I didn't fully know how to answer yet. I've already told her to leave, I said. She's gone. I told Tyler not to come back. But this isn't something we fix in a weekend. He nodded. Then, do you want a divorce? I turned to him. That question coming from him hit different. Like he needed to understand what life was going to be now. What we were choosing. I don't know, I said. Not yet. I need to know who I'm dealing with before I make that call. Because the person she's become isn't the woman I married. And if she tries to spin this to the world like we failed, I want to be ready. He was quiet a long time. Then, if you do divorce her, can I stay with you? That was the first time my heart broke clean in half. Of course, I said immediately. This is your home. Always will be. He nodded and looked out into the dark again. Do I have to see her? He asked. I paused. No, not if you don't want to. You're old enough. We'll figure it out. He nodded again, slower this time. And just like that, a small measure of calm passed between us. Thin, fragile, but real. But the calm didn't last. Because the next morning a letter arrived. Handwritten. No return address. From her. And inside it, she rewrote the story. Every word of it. Turning herself into the victim. She claimed I had emotionally abandoned her. That Ethan had become distant because I created a toxic environment. That Tyler had been the only safe space she had. And at the end, she wrote, if you push this into the public, I'll have no choice but to explain why our marriage was broken. You'll lose more than me. It wasn't just a letter. It was a warning. And I realized then, she wasn't ashamed. She was preparing for war. That I read that letter 3 times, each slower than the last. My grip tightening with every line like I could strangle the ink off the page. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even pretending anymore. The whole thing read like a preemptive defense. Like she was laying the foundation to walk out of this mess with clean hands and dry eyes. It started with a smear of emotional manipulation. How lonely she'd been, how I had stopped seeing her, how our connection had disintegrated long before anything physical happened. That part nearly made me laugh. She was rewriting history, planting false flags on real memories. The part that twisted my stomach, though, was what came next. She said I had created a home full of emotional distance and intimidation. That I was the reason she and Ethan were drifting. That she regretted how things unfolded with Tyler. But that it had come from a place of seeking safety and connection. Safety. With a 17-year-old boy. Then the final threat. If I chose to lash out, she'd be forced to tell the full truth. That I was unstable. That I had a temper. That I was controlling. She was going to paint me as the villain in her story and Tyler as some broken soul she saved. I sat at the kitchen table with that letter in front of me like it was a ticking bomb, not sure whether to burn it or frame it as evidence. Ethan walked in as I was rereading the part about emotional intimidation. He asked what it was. I told him the truth. She sent a letter. She's planning her narrative. He raised an eyebrow. What does that mean? She wants to make it look like I drove her to it. He didn't hesitate. That's garbage. She's playing the long game, I said. She's planting seeds, hoping people believe it's a gray area. He stepped closer, looked down at the page, read over my shoulder. I watched his face shift as he hit the same lines I did. I could see the realization hit him in waves. She wasn't just wrong. She was dangerous. She's going to lie, he said. She already is. He didn't say anything for a while, just stood there, then finally asked, what are you going to do? I told him the truth. I'm not going to play quiet. She wants to drag me through the mud. She'll have to do it while choking on the dirt she threw. That night I called a lawyer, told him everything. He didn't gasp, didn't react. He just started writing things down. These types of stories didn't surprise him anymore. But what he said next caught me off guard. If she's this calculated, she's probably got documentation. Don't be shocked if she's been recording you for months. Just in case. I hadn't thought of that. Suddenly I remembered the random times she'd asked me questions out of nowhere. Loaded, weirdly specific questions meant to provoke. I thought she was just being difficult. Now I realized she might have been baiting me. He continued, whatever you do, stay calm. Stay clean. She's not trying to win. She's trying to ruin. I hung up with my stomach twisted into knots. The next day, I contacted the school. I had to know if she'd manipulated Ethan's attendance records to cover for her meetings with Tyler. The school secretary was hesitant but confirmed it. 3 absences, all excused with calls made from her phone, claiming to be me. Twice for Ethan. Once for Tyler. That gave me what I needed. She hadn't just cheated. She'd orchestrated it. And now she was trying to scrub her fingerprints off the crime scene while blaming me for the arson. So I made another call. To her sister. And that's when things shifted. Because her sister didn't sound shocked. Not even a little. She sounded tired. Hesitant. Like she'd been holding her tongue for too long. "Look," she said. "I shouldn't say anything. But this isn't the first time." I felt something freeze inside me. "What do you mean?" "I mean there was someone before Tyler. Last year. Someone older." She told me it was just emotional, but the way she talked about it, it was the same. I closed my eyes, leaned back against the wall. "How long have you known?" I asked. There was a pause. "A while. And you didn't say anything?" "She made me promise. Said she was figuring herself out. Said you wouldn't understand. Said you'd twist it." I laughed. Of course she did. Of course she said I'd twist it. I thanked her for her honesty, hung up, and stared at the ceiling. The pieces were clicking into place. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't even a moment of weakness. It was a pattern, process, and the worst part, I hadn't even seen the final move yet. Because while I was putting out fires, she was lighting new ones behind my back. It happened the next afternoon. I was sitting in the living room, going over everything again. Letter, school records, notes from my call with the lawyer. Trying to keep myself organized while my brain swirled like a storm drain in a hurricane. Ethan had gone for a walk. He did that now. Just disappeared for hours at a time. Said it cleared his head. I didn't ask too many questions. I figured we both deserved a little space to sort through the wreckage. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. The only people who'd come by lately were delivery drivers and guilt-ridden neighbors pretending they hadn't heard whispers. I opened the door with zero expectations, and found a man I didn't recognize. He was in his late 20s maybe. Neat beard, dark jacket, eyes like he was both tired and angry. Tired of being angry. He looked at me with a hesitation I'd come to recognize lately. "Do you know who I am?" "You don't know me," he said. "But I know your wife." I didn't answer, just waited. He glanced behind him, then back at me. "My name's Aiden. I used to work with her. Last year. Before she quit the agency." Still, I said nothing. "I saw your name in her call log," he continued. "She used to talk about you. A lot. But not like you'd expect." I let him in. We sat at the dining table. Me on one side, him on the other, with the sun dragging shadows across the floor like time itself wanted to stretch this out. He laid it all out. Methodically. They'd had a thing. Started as long lunches, late nights at the office. Progressed into something more. He didn't give details, and I didn't ask. I didn't need more mental footage. "I ended it," he said. "She got too intense. Too demanding. Started talking like we were soulmates. Like we had a future." I stayed still. Focused. "She said you were distant. Cold. Said you didn't touch her anymore. That you were emotionally checked out." I almost laughed. He leaned forward. "But here's the thing. When I told her it wasn't real, that it was just stress and bad judgment, she lost it. Threatened to ruin me. Said she'd tell HR I harassed her if I didn't back off completely." My pulse slowed. I could feel my own heartbeat settling into a rhythm of disgust. "She manipulated everything," he said. "I didn't know about Tyler. I didn't know she was still married. I thought you two were separated. That it was all clean." I nodded slowly. "She's very good at that." He sighed. I kept quiet, until I heard what happened with the kid. Someone from the old office mentioned it. I checked her socials. She's deleting everything. Cleaning house. Of course she was. Erasing digital fingerprints before anyone connected the dots. "I'm telling you this because I know what she's capable of," Aiden said. "And I'm not gonna let her lie her way out of this one again. Not at my expense. Not at yours. If it comes to court, I'll testify. I've got emails, messages, dates, everything." I thanked him, sincerely. He left without asking for anything in return. And just like that, I had a witness. Not just to her cheating, but to her strategy. This wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore. This was about exposing a person who used intimacy as leverage and lies as currency. But the universe wasn't done yet. Because that night, Ethan came home with a bruise under his eye. I jumped off the couch. What happened? He didn't speak at first. Just walked to the freezer, grabbed an ice pack, pressed it to his face. Finally, he muttered, "Tyler." My chest tightened. What did he do? He found me near the park, Ethan said. Tried to talk. Said it wasn't what I thought. Said Mom was going through something and I didn't understand. I told him he was sick. And he hit me. Once. I swung back. Then he left. I was already reaching for my keys. Ethan looked at me, ice still pressed to his face. Don't. It's done. I'm not scared of him. He's just pathetic. But it wasn't about fear. It was about lines. And Tyler had just crossed one too many. So I didn't drive to his house. I didn't call the cops. I did something worse. I called the school board. Reported everything. His behavior. His relationship with a married woman. His fight with my son. And then I attached a letter anonymously that laid it all out. Minus names but with enough detail to force a meeting. Because if she thought this was just about us, she was wrong. She dragged a teenager into her mess. And I was going to drag the truth out into daylight. One lie at a time. It didn't take long. The school board called me within 48 hours. They asked for clarification on the report. Wanted to know if I was a parent. If the accusations were based on rumor or fact. I could hear the discomfort in the woman's voice as she tried to remain neutral. But she knew. There was weight in her tone. A careful rhythm. Like she was tiptoeing across glass. She knew this wasn't just about hallway rumors or adolescent drama. I confirmed everything. Gave my name. Told them I was the father of a student. I didn't use words like affair or seduction. I used facts. Age, relationship, supervision, repeated contact, emotional manipulation, and the time and date I walked in on them. That part wasn't anonymous anymore. I wanted it to stick. They said they'd open an internal review. I said I'd cooperate however necessary. Then I hung up and sat in silence, heart steady but cold, like I'd stepped into a different version of myself. One built entirely from precision and restraint. I told Ethan that night. He just nodded. Didn't ask questions. He was starting to wear this mask I recognized. A quiet, controlled detachment. The kind people wear when they've been hit too many times in too short a span and need time to rebuild their face underneath. We didn't talk about his mom. Not that night. But she made sure we didn't forget her. 2 days later, she showed up at the house. No warning. No call. Just walked up the porch like it was still hers. I opened the door before she knocked. She looked surprised. Not guilty. Not ashamed. Just thrown off. Like the idea that I'd have the upper hand unsettled her. She wore white. White. Of all colors. Like she was trying to project innocence or start a new narrative on the porch of the home she blew up. I didn't let her in. She asked if Ethan was home. I told her no. She asked if we could talk. Just us. I said we could talk right there. On the porch. She hesitated. Her eyes flicked behind me like she expected to see photos still hanging where she'd left them. They weren't. I'd taken them all down the morning after the letter. Even the wedding picture. She started slow. Said she missed the way things were. Said she'd had time to reflect. Said she'd been confused. I asked her if that's what she told Tyler when she was in bed with him. That she was confused. She ignored that. Kept going. She said the version of me she'd remembered had come back. And that she wanted to try and repair what could be repaired. Then she smiled. Smiled. And said, I don't want this to get messy. I'm still Ethan's mother. There it was. Not a plea. A veiled threat. She wasn't here to make peace. She was here to see what leverage she still had. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, stood between her and the house. You're done controlling the story, I said. You're not coming back into this home. You're not spinning this into a tragedy you can weaponize. Her face went cold. Her smile died. I've spoken to the school board, I continued. You dragged a teenage boy into this. And now they know. She blinked. You went to the school? I told the truth. She crossed her arms. You realize what you've done, right? Tyler's life could be ruined. I stared at her. He made his choice. So did you. She stepped back like she'd been slapped. Then she said it. You always needed someone to blame. That's why you're alone. The words didn't even register. Not really. I was past the point of reacting to her scripts. I'm not alone, I said. I've got my son. I've got the truth. And soon enough, you'll have nothing but the stories you keep trying to rewrite. She stood there for a few seconds. Then she laughed, low and bitter. You think you're winning? I don't have to win, I said. I just have to outlast the lie. She turned and walked down the steps, got into her car, drove off, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Not relief, not peace, but control. The kind you earn by walking through fire without pretending you didn't get burned. I went back inside, and on the kitchen counter was a voicemail transcription. From a blocked number. From Tyler's mother. Asking if we could talk. She had something to share. Something about what her son told her. And it wasn't what I expected. The message was short. No drama. No begging. Just a calm, clipped voice saying she'd like to speak. And that it concerned what Tyler's been saying about the situation. I stared at the screen for a long time, not sure what to make of it. Tyler's mother, Karen, was someone I barely knew. Our interactions had always been surface level. PTA meetings, holiday parties, an occasional wave when she dropped him off. But the tone in her voice wasn't one of a parent trying to shield their child. It was something else, like she was teetering between apology and confession. I called her back. She answered on the first ring. I appreciate you calling, she said right away. I wasn't sure if I should even reach out, but I think you deserve to know what my son has been saying behind closed doors. I didn't speak. I just listened. I confronted Tyler, she continued, after I heard what happened with Ethan, and then got wind of the school opening a file. I didn't get the full truth, not immediately, but I've known my son long enough to tell when he's scared. She paused. I could hear her pacing. He said it wasn't just your wife who initiated things. He said she pressured him. That it started small, like attention, compliments, texts. Then she started testing boundaries. Said he felt guilty. Said he tried to end it, but she made him feel like if he told anyone, everything would collapse. Ethan's friendship, his school life, even his future. She told him no one would believe him, that it would ruin her life if he spoke up. I gripped the phone tighter. My stomach turned over. Karen exhaled. He's not innocent. I know that, but he's 17, and she's not. She used his trust. She used my trust. I should have seen it, but I didn't. And now he's unraveling. I said nothing for a long time. Finally, I asked, why are you telling me this? Because I know you're coming for her, she said. And I think she deserves it. But my son, he's a mess right now. He's scared, and not just of you. He's scared of what she might do, what she might say. I've seen the messages. She's trying to spin this. Already told him he needs to say he lied, or she'll claim he seduced her. That stopped my breath for a beat. She's going to say he was the aggressor? I asked. She's prepping her alibi, Karen confirmed. That's why I'm calling you. I have the messages. I've backed them up. I'm not letting her bury my son just to protect her image. It was the first time in this entire mess that someone else looked beyond their own damage and saw the wreckage she left behind. I told her we should meet. She agreed. That night, we met at a coffee shop across town. Neutral ground. She brought a flash drive and a thick manila envelope full of printed screenshots, messages, call logs, even voice memos. I read them all. And by the time I was done, two things were clear. My wife hadn't just been reckless. She was building a story so dark and deliberate. She was willing to destroy a teenager's life to shield herself from the consequences. The messages were damning. She told Tyler things like, we can't stop now. You said you wanted this. If you tell anyone, they'll say you came on to me. I'm the adult, remember? You don't understand what I'd lose if this gets out. You'd be fine. You're young. People expect boys to be reckless. But I'd be the villain. She was already painting herself as the victim in her private correspondence, training Tyler to parrot it, to believe it. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about manipulation. This was about survival. She was staging a version of herself for every person she thought might testify. Me, Ethan, Tyler, Karen, the school. She was creating tailored truths like a politician. Preemptive strikes disguised as explanations. I looked at Karen. "You're going to help me stop her," I said. She nodded without hesitation. "I already am. We made a plan. We'd take the evidence to the school board first, then to a lawyer, then, if we had to the public. We'd build a record before she could rewrite ours. Because I wasn't just fighting for my name anymore. I was fighting for my son's safety, for Tyler's truth, and for every version of the story she hadn't told yet, but was preparing to. She wanted to play the victim, but I was about to hand the world the receipts. It moved fast after that. The school board called an emergency hearing. Quiet, behind closed doors, but urgent. I submitted everything: Karen's screenshots, the flash drive, a timeline I'd built down to the hour. They didn't ask many questions, just nodded. Some looked sick. One woman couldn't meet my eyes at all. They promised to begin a formal inquiry into Tyler's safety and whether any school policies had been violated, not by him, but by her. Because while she wasn't school staff, the fact that she manipulated a student who was deeply embedded in that environment made it their problem too. Meanwhile, Karen's lawyer contacted mine. We agreed to keep our efforts aligned. She didn't want money. She wanted her son protected, his name unsmeared before it could be dragged. My priority was the same. I'd spent weeks in a fog of betrayal, shame, rage. But now, for the first time, I had clarity and momentum. The only one who didn't know what was coming was her, until she walked into it herself. She showed up again, this time at Ethan's soccer match. It was a championship game, big turnout. The field was packed with families, teachers, students. She stood off to the side, pretending to blend in, wearing a sun hat like she was hiding in plain sight. But I saw her. So did Ethan. He walked right off the field, right up to her. Didn't yell, didn't cry, just said, "You shouldn't be here. I don't want you here." She tried to touch his shoulder. He stepped back. "Don't do that," he said, loud enough for nearby parents to turn. That was the moment her mask slipped. Just a little. You could see the cracks forming, her lips twitching, her eyes shifting left to right, scanning to see who was watching. She turned to me. I walked over, calm, composed, my son at my side. "You're not welcome here," I told her. She opened her mouth to say something. I don't know what, but she didn't get the chance. Because Karen stepped forward from the crowd, holding a phone. Live recording. "I wouldn't," she said. That was all it took. Her face collapsed. Not with guilt, not with sorrow, with calculation. She realized this wasn't salvageable anymore. She turned without a word and walked away, disappearing into the parking lot like a character being written out of a script she no longer controlled. That night, the formal notification arrived. The school was opening an investigation, and the case might expand beyond academic parameters depending on what the lawyers found. The letter was dry, clinical, but what it meant was thunder. It meant the first real consequences were forming in the distance, rumbling toward her. I didn't celebrate, not yet, because that weekend I got a call. Blocked number. I answered out of habit. It was her. Her voice was low, controlled. "You think you've won." I didn't respond. "You're tearing everything apart. Do you really want to do this to Ethan?" There it was. The final card. She wasn't talking about him as a mother. She was using him as a hostage. I said only this: "I'm not the one who broke him." Then I hung up, and I blocked the number. The next morning, my lawyer called. She had filed a formal motion. She wanted shared custody of Ethan. After everything, after the affair, the threats, the manipulation, she was going to try to drag our son into court, just to prove she still had power. And that's when I made my final decision. No more silence. No more private shame. If she wanted a stage, I'd give her one. The courtroom was quiet. Not the kind of quiet you expect in a place like that. This was denser, heavier, the kind that made even the sound of papers shifting seem rude. I sat on the left side of the room beside my lawyer, a calm, steel-eyed woman who had already shredded worse cases than mine. Across from us sat her, flanked by a man in a discount suit who looked like he'd taken the job out of obligation, not faith. She looked composed, like she was playing a role. the remorseful, misunderstood mother. Pearl earrings, neutral makeup, hands folded neatly in her lap. But her eyes scanned the room too much, too fast, watching everyone, calculating reactions, gauging what narrative she needed to lean into next. Ethan wasn't in the courtroom. The judge had agreed with my request to keep him out of it until the final stage. He gave a written statement instead. I hadn't seen it until that morning, and reading it nearly brought me to my knees. He'd written in firm, brutal clarity, "My mother violated my trust in a way I'll never understand. She manipulated my best friend into a relationship, lied about my father, and made me question my own memories. I don't feel safe around her. I don't feel she cares about me. I feel like she sees me as a tool in whatever game she's playing. I don't want to live with her. I don't want her in my life right now. Maybe not ever." It was 3 pages of calm, raw teenage honesty. No fluff, no exaggeration, just a boy bleeding truth on paper. The judge read it twice. Then my lawyer spoke. She didn't raise her voice, didn't wave her arms or try to dramatize the situation. She simply laid out the timeline. The affair with Tyler. The false narrative spun to family and friends. The letter she sent me trying to preemptively frame me. The threats of twisting the story if I made things messy. The recorded message to Tyler, telling him to claim she was the victim. And finally, the evidence that she planned to use Ethan as leverage, not for custody but for image recovery. Karen testified next. Calm, direct. She read a few of the messages her son had received, word for word. Her voice didn't shake. By the time the judge turned to her, the room was already frozen in place. Even the clerk had stopped typing. She stood, cleared her throat, and lied. She said she was in pain, that she had made mistakes but was trying to heal, that she didn't realize how vulnerable Tyler was, and that it wasn't about manipulation. It was about trauma. Her trauma. A broken marriage. A distant husband. A boy who offered comfort. She looked the judge in the eye and said, "I never meant to hurt anyone." Then my lawyer stood again. Didn't say a word. Just handed the judge a piece of paper. It was her message to Tyler. The one that read, "If you tell anyone, they'll believe I seduced you. You'll look like the one who took advantage. I'm the adult. Use your head." The judge stared at it for a long time, then looked back at her. "You're not getting custody," he said simply. "Not shared, not partial. This isn't about co-parenting. This is about damage. And your son has made it crystal clear. He wants distance, not visitation. And frankly, I don't blame him." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there, perfectly still, while the world she thought she could rebuild collapsed around her. When the gavel came down, it sounded final. Because it was. Outside the courthouse, the air felt too fresh, too open. Karen hugged me, said goodbye. My lawyer shook my hand, said, "You earned this." And then Ethan stepped out from behind the pillar where he'd been waiting with a friend from school. He looked at me. "Is it over?" I nodded. "She can't touch us now." He didn't smile, but something in his shoulders loosened. Some invisible weight lifted. We walked to the car together in silence. At home, we made grilled cheese, watched a movie neither of us paid attention to, just sat on the couch, the dog curled at our feet. Normal, quiet, peaceful. Later that night, I found myself standing in the doorway of Ethan's room, watching him sleep like I used to when he was 5. He looked younger, lighter, like someone who'd finally stepped out of someone else's shadow. I walked to my room, sat on the bed where the whole thing had begun, and I thought about what I'd say to someone going through what I just did. Here it is. Trust your instincts. Silence doesn't mean peace. It means someone's waiting to rewrite your story without your permission. Document everything. Don't yell. Don't hit back. Let the facts bleed slow and steady, and let them pile up like bricks. Eventually, the truth builds a wall that no lie can climb. And one last thing. Karma? She's not fast. But when she shows up, she's surgical. And she never, ever forgets.